Okay. Everyone, welcome back to another session where we talk about Web3 marketing and everything in between with our partners around at Surgence Labs. And today we've got someone very special, Charles from Clique. And Charles, I'll let you introduce yourself to the audience.
Hi, everyone. I'm Charles, resident slave at Clique. Um, what we do is pretty boring, or at least it's exciting to me. Clique is focused on distribution tooling, operate two primary products. One of it is something that a lot of retail audience members might have interfaced with, which is effectively building white labeled airdrop solutions for some of the largest launches out there. We've done over 70% of all outsourced developments since 2024, including some of the names, but not limited to Eigenlayer, Aether, Barachain, Babylon, Plume, Elixir, Stakestone, Zero G, Somnia, Camp, Mitosis, Intuition Labs. The list is pretty extensive, right? And there's a lot of clients coming up soon as well. I'll give a more thorough overview of the core operations, but just to quickly give the spotlight on the other product that we've built. If the airdrops represent the distribution of tokens to retail participants, then the other product is really focused on the internal distribution of tokens. So effectively a token operation management, where on the B2B side, projects, foundations are able to set up various schedules, manage them accordingly, and also upload different batches for their investors, KOLs, advisors,
Nice.
so forth and so on. Nothing too crazy, right? Fickle that we just pair up both products together, and yeah, that's basically what we do.
Amazing. So I know that airdrop marketing has been such a consistent tactic deployed by so many protocols, very effectively and very ineffectively over the past many years now. Especially in 2025, we've seen some of the biggest airdrops come to market too, and some of the most pathetic as well. I want you to give an overview or your spicy take on airdrop marketing um, as a
Airdrop
key
marketing.
strategic pillar. Yeah, airdrop campaigns, airdrop rewards, and how these ecosystems use airdrops.
Mm.
Well, let's
Well,
explain that first to the audience, like your take on it. Yeah.
I think everyone's familiar with what an airdrop is, and there's actually
Mm.
been a lot of heated discussions on the timeline over what's the best way to align your end community. So you've got airdrops on one side, and you've got ICOs on the other. CT is very fickle with their opinions. One week they're oh, ICOs are so back, and then when they realize that the sale doesn't fill up or gets oversubscribed, they're it's so over. Um, I think both tools are fundamentally shit, right? That's the truth of it. Because they are, as I mentioned, just tools, and they're
Mm.
effective with the strategies that teams or networks aim to leverage them into.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, historically, they've been a pretty good way that's become the de facto norm for most protocols to bootstrap their initial community, as well as align their end users.
Yeah.
Part of it is, of course, to it could be from a revenue angle, where if you're a perp dex, you're obviously making money from fees. It could be
Yeah.
from a growth angle, if you're an identity protocol and you're looking to grow more users, or even the crypto cards recently, right? Tria has
Yeah.
gone in a pretty significant growth of their users, and adoption of paid cards from all of their airdrop GTM campaigns.
Yeah.
Mm, But yeah, I think that's what airdrops have served a purpose for historically. Now when it comes to the landscape, uh when it comes to airdrop marketing, I think the playbook is pretty much there, right? You announce a big catalyst, so it could be a very strong institutional partnership. It could be a fundraise, right? You launch a points program or some kind of community initiative. You plan out your GTM accordingly, in the hopes, of course, of crescendoing your way up to a listing and a TGE, right?
Mm. Mm.
But as playbooks come and go, when everyone does the same thing, the effect and the impact is also reduced. and there's been more token launches like in 2025 and 2024 than ever, which also reflects like the low retail appetite for a lot of these like
Yeah.
tokens when like the secondary market. All right. But yeah, general overview of like the airdrops. I think like what you wanted to like cover next was like spicy takes, right?
Yeah, because I mean, like, especially when what you were mentioning there, a lot of protocols use airdrop campaigns and incentives to bootstrap top of funnel metrics. But I also do believe that so many struggle to nail that lower end of funnel metric where it aligns with, like you said, trading fees or whatever ways the protocols can generate like real enterprise value. And I bet you there's a few spicy takes within that where people just launch flawed programs around points, for instance.
Hmm. Well, I mean, this is a loaded question because it really like covers like or tries to like answer the question of why is the token even like needed, right?
Mm.
So teams will spend a very long time trying to like define like what their protocol is like about. If they're infrastructure, then they're going to try to like secure a couple like design partners to then like
Yeah.
validate where like the infrastructure that they're building is like important. And then on top of that, they also have to like pair up the narrative of like how the token ties in with like how the broader like architecture like works, so that you could complete this like stakeholder alignment matrix, right? But the first question is like, do teams even need like tokens? And for the most part, like majority, I'd say like no. Right? There's really been like no real like case to demonstrate why like so many protocols like require like network tokens. If you're building like a chain, for instance, then like as an L1, the design of like a token as part of like your architecture is like non-negotiable, right? Unless you're building like Arc or like Tempo, where like your gas token happens to be like USDC or like USDT or like any other
Mm.
like stable coins. Um, but that's like a good example of like where like a token would be like important. But then for like the majority of others, it's really tough for them to like tie in like the narrative of like why you require like token. Couple like
Yeah.
takes on, like airdrop marketing. So they've been, I mean, strategies have been for the most part like dwindling in terms of like impact over time. And I think
Yeah.
a big problem that the industry is like facing is that there is an over reliance on CT as like a discovery funnel, right? And that's like a massive like problem because like everyone knows that exchanges ask for like pretty insane listing fees, right? Like sometimes in like the hundreds of like thousands of dollars per exchange with like a significant amount of like tokens. And you have to ask yourself like why teams would even want to do this. And that's because like at the end of the day, like they are prioritizing like external discovery from like the exchanges. It's still like a big maybe, but it
Yeah.
overall translates pretty clearly that like they don't have the conviction that their core user base, at least like on like CT, is enough to propagate like the narrative and just like grow the ecosystem, contribute to like the Lindy effect, right? Awareness of like the project. So that's like probably one of the biggest like problems in the space, because if you had cracked external distribution like what Polymarket or like Kalshi has done, then like every single exchange would be like chasing to like list you, because they know that like in terms of digital assets, if you were to launch a token, your token would be highly sought out by like their own users, which is actually like a
Yeah.
platform risk, because if they didn't list you, then like fuck it, like if Binance didn't have like Polymarket, then and Gate happened to have it, then all the users would go to Gate to trade, right? And then like they wouldn't contribute to like the trading fees or like the volume that would happen on like these like centralized exchanges. So I think because like most builders have this like, I'd say, inability to crack outside of like CT and actually find or build like meaningful products, uh, that's why like their tokenomics get like cooked. And of course,
Yeah.
that brings me to like the second point. There are no such thing as like fair launches anymore. I know that like a couple like platforms like Legion, right, or like Echo are trying to like solve for that. But even if you assess like the token sale platform that like Coinbase has done recently, they did like a Monad ICO. What was the valuation, Rufi?
I think it was 2.5 if that was selling it at, if I'm correct.
Yeah. Like the definition of like an ICO you see is like an initial coin offering,
Mm.
but that's like an inflated consensus offering. So like you don't really come in, you come in on like the same terms as like some of like the previous VCs, sure, but
Yeah.
in the past what really like allured a lot of like external retail users was the fact that like you could suddenly take part or build conviction. Obviously there'd be like a cliff or like a longer like vesting period, but and not like 100% unlock, right? Which is not possible anymore, because like the capital velocity that requires you to escape from like, you know, a billion to like 10 billion is like significantly by orders of magnitude like more severe than going from like 10 mil to like 100 mil, right?
Mm.
The upside is just not there. Hence why most folks eventually like leave out. And part of this is because like, you know, of like the fundraising cycles where like valuations are like constantly set at like higher like vals, right? So like teams raise like more capital. Sometimes they don't need to raise that much capital, but they still do. Uh, and yeah, that brings you to like the second problem. Like, you know, there's no real like access or like incentive for like retail participants. The risk and reward ratio is just like way too skewed towards them losing money as opposed to like them making money. So over time, it's
Yeah.
only natural to explain why like retail wouldn't have like such a strong appetite in this. But yeah, like given that like, you know, two like hot takes right now. One is that like, you know, we have no discovery and it's like shit, and the second one is that like valuations
Yeah.
are like really high. There are plenty more problems I think in this space that I'm happy to like cover, but I'll just like pause here because I need to drink some water.
Yeah, that's all good. No, there's definitely like those two for sure. And I think one other thing too is that CTs and echo chamber has been naturally, I think, shrinking a little bit or becoming further fragmented. And then there's been a oversupply of just airdrop campaigns and point campaigns and upcoming ecosystems to participate in. And the imbalance is just overwhelming for CT users and for builders as well. There's just so much incestuous like user sharing, um, and
That's
like
a good point.
breaking out of the chamber is so difficult for people because, like you said, product market fit is not there. What are they going to be bringing? I think the recent like saturation in the neobank sort of crypto neobank space is a testament to this like desperate need to find PMF because as soon as people were able to just like white label and ship quick payment solutions, they're like, oh yes, this is like a clear PMF solution. I'm going to launch that with a points campaign, see if it cooks. And
I
it's
mean,
it's crazy how many, yeah.
that last take I think is like slightly misguided, only because the reason
Mhm.
why you're seeing so many of these like neo banks or like neo finance, which is like the meta that like a couple guys like Andy and Roll Up have been like trying to like, you know, spread, is that I call it like the fintechification of like Web3.
Mm.
And then like, you know, a lot of like the movements in the space have always been, especially in like recent time, for like stable coins as well as like real world assets, and payments, all pushed for, because now for the first time ever there is a modicum of like regulatory clarity, right? That's like the
Yeah.
clarity of like the Genius Act. So that's why, like, shortly after, even though some teams have been like preparing, that was still like a massive bet that like the guidelines were gonna be like fleshed out. They're now ready to like go to market, or then they explore that to find like commercial like viability or like validation of like their products. It makes sense to build these kind of like platforms. That's why like
Yeah.
appetite for Tempo, right, like came around. Arc decided to like build like its own like L1 stable, Plasma, all these like
Yeah.
crypto cards. Rain raised like $250 million, which is like absolutely insane. But like they deserve it, right? Like they've
Yeah.
achieved such strong like traction before like this whole movement was like hyped, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Plasma is a taboo topic on this one.
why?
We don't talk. I'm down so bad on it,
So
man. That launch was magnificent, but I held for too long.
it's often the
Yeah,
case, right? Um,
yeah. We were on a call with on a podcast with Jupiter yesterday, and they were teasing that actually they were also going to get into the payment space with their mobile app, Jupiter Mobile, bring in payments to just like complete that end to end user journey for. Like they see that as their Trojan horse to get their next million, just general global users, not Web3 specific, even Web2. Um, People to onboard fiat, make the most of the benefits that crypto offers, including like instant settlements, um, like high yields, and so on, whilst also having the freedom of like bank accounts in Web two, being able to pay anywhere, compatibility, and so on. And we were talking about the fact that like 2 years ago, I would say that a small percentage of the space was actively using crypto every day for spending. But now look at everyone using their different redot pays or whatever. It's been an like incredible shift, right? I think Trio was one of the ones that was recently capturing retail interest too, and then like you said, stables. Um, and just to go back as well, so we were talking about some of the spicy takes on these airdrop and point token distribution campaigns. I want to ask you, you've had so much experience working with top protocols, especially on token distributions and strategy. What are some of the good characteristics, like those characteristics that make up a successful campaign?
Wow, Rufi, you come with like loaded questions, bro. That's like asking to like give out the.
Give out the
Um,
alpha. Give it out.
okay, there's two answers to this, right? Like, first off, I think it depends on like perspective. What would you personally define as like a successful airdrop campaign? And like,
Mm,
who's actually like considering like what like success is like benchmarked on? Are you talking from like a project perspective? Are you talking about from like a retail perspective, right? Like, what lens are you looking at it from?
yeah. 100%. I think let's talk about from a project perspective, a project perspective, and in terms of definition of success, I'd say for just like a very high impact TGE, very high. Like I guess in Web three, unfortunately, if your token generation event does not go well, you may just fall out of relevance
You're
and just
dead.
have a disheartened community quickly. Yeah, you're dead. So, like, good token control, distributing tokens to the right wallets, the right people, most aligned people, so on.
Okay, from a project's perspective, and I'll like quickly also give a hot take on like why you haven't seen like good token launches.
Mm,
Um, like marketing, one of the biggest like problem is that your pre TG audience is often not going to be like your post TG like audience. You know,
yeah.
the system is like kind of like broken in that state where unfortunately like the exchanges that sit on like the outskirt, they'll have like a clear set. I'm not saying that they don't update it. They update it like all the damn time, like every single like month or so. But like they'll have like different KPIs that they need to like see from like the various like projects and like hitting them, and unfortunately like most of them would be like those like vanity metrics that we're like so accustomed to, which is why people launch like InfoFi campaigns, right? Which is why people do like Galaxy or like Zeely or even like focus on like more of like these like vanity metrics that don't really bring value to like the protocol at whole, right?
Mm,
Um, so I'd say like to answer your first question, like what defines like a successful TG? A successful TGE or at least like a TG campaign is something or like initiatives that allow you to like foster the good like community metrics that would procure you the exchange listings that you want, right? So that you can really tap into like that external discovery. So even if like the token price goes down, while not ideal, at least like you're listed in a couple like venues.
yeah.
Now whether or not like those venues pay off for the long term, that really like depends. And a lot of people like disagree with, if it's even like worth the money to like go on there. But that's like I'd say like the project's like first indicator of like success, right? We've done everything right. We managed to get like the listing like discussions that we want, and that's basically it. Give me 2 seconds. I'm going to like charge my computer.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, good. No, that totally makes sense. I think especially like looking at the exchange requirements for even projects to entertain discussions, or for the exchanges to entertain discussions with the projects. You look at Yeah, actually, there's a good story. It's like there's a current project that's going viral, and is moving towards TGE. And we were working with them for some time, and especially back in the days, the founder would often come into the calls and be like, "Oh, guys, like we just went into a conversation with you know the big B, Binance,
I
and
bet.
they were saying our they were saying that like XYZ metrics are like it was that exchange actually gave a feedback document back to the client, and 90% of it was just focused on like social optics, engagement, not looking consistent, community size, not great chatter, whatever. And then there was just a little bit of request for information around like on-chain metrics and performance as well. I was like, wow, this is the industry we live in, huh?
But do you
it's
know the reason why?
it's tell me. I must know the Charles special,
Well, I
the
mean, like
secret.
this is like my own like personal thoughts, right? But like we all know
Mm,
that like exchanges are focused on like making like money, right? And then like
yeah,
part of like the revenue that they incur is of course like on the listing, but also like on the volume. And there's a lot of like
yeah.
different like angles of like how they make like money. But I think the reason why like they're so cautious and doing like their due diligence when it comes to like the addresses that like interact with like a specific like protocol or all these like vanity metrics is because like the real benchmark that they're trying to like assess is like organic demand for like the product, right? By all means, and this is gonna suck for like any community like retail users to like hear, but like you have a higher like probability for like a community user to like double down their conviction in like a project because they've been using the product over like a course of time, right?
Mm, mm,
And like it's kind of like a weird battle where like your on-chain users are also kind of like the exchanges have like a duty towards their own users. So if they can't assess that there's going to be like organic appetite for like the token outside of like their exchanges, then there's always a risk that like it's also like risk management. So
mm.
will like your on-chain users like dump on like my exchange users, right? Like who's going to like cheat on like who basically? That's why like Big E usually has like now a new policy put in place where they will force the projects, or at least for like I'd say like not the tier ones, but maybe even like the tier Bs. If they're listed on like Binance Alpha has to go 1 hour before, like the TGE,
Yeah.
and they also have like
Quick.
to release schedule like policies like they are constantly updated, just to like mitigate like the risk of their users getting like shafted.
Yeah, yeah. Quick question. So, when you are dealing with your partners at Clique and when you speak to them about their upcoming TG, when they're showing interest in working with you at Clique as well, uh, talk to me about like what that discussion and discovery calls look like, especially for like any founders, CMOs that are listening. What that journey looks like with Clique to nail that TG.
Oh, it's time for me to show myself, right?
Yeah, yeah.
No. Okay. I like to preface this that like I never approach like obviously I want to work with like as many clients as possible, but I don't like hard selling.
Yeah.
And while I have like a duty to also like talk about like the services that we do, the beauty of like what we've built so far is that when we approach teams, we effectively present them with a sandbox environment. So think it, build it, right? Sounds super cliche, but that's basically it. Because the core philosophy of like when we started building like airdrops at the start, they used to be fairly vanilla interfaces where you connected your wallet, you checked your eligibility, you saw how many tokens you had, and you like claimed them. Um, but like obviously that model doesn't work anymore because projects are starting to like want to minimize token expenditure and like maximize output. In Web2, you have like this like fantastic notion called like CAC to like LTV, and like your job is just to
Mm.
like reduce like increase like the other, or like ROAS, like return on like ad spend. And I think where we present ourselves, or at least uh, talk to like teams, is really understanding like what their current like implementation like looks like if they've even thought about it, right? I'm talking purely from like the distribution side, which of course ties into like what they've done on like the GTMN, on like attributing like various like stakeholder groups. So maybe it would be like your ex yappers, it could be like your Discord community members, it could be like your Telegram users, it could be like your actual application users, And then you can even go in like more detail on like the application users, how they interface with like the product, when they started like interfacing with the product, what new features are being like kicked in, how do like each user actions actually contribute meaningfully to like that one like protocol. And the reason why we try to do like a deep dive audit on like their entire like operations is because like we fundamentally believe that like no two airdrop solutions should be the same. You could have like some commonalities, sure, right? But like predominantly you'd want to like focus on tailoring like a solution that like strives for alignment as opposed to like a one-shot distribution, because I think we're past like that stage in like 2023 and 2024 where you just like gave like a bunch of tokens to like randoms, and then they all like sold and they just like extracted to like leave to go to like the next like community. Now there's of
Yeah.
course like the argument to be made by saying like, hey, you should just build something and like have conviction that like people will want to like buy your tokens. I think
Yeah.
Serpent like Ethos wrote that today, right? And I disagree with like that stance, right? Because like, yeah, proven until like um sorry, guilty until like whatever, you get the gist. The whole point I'm trying to like drive across is that we had like these like moments where we gave like free money out to like users without like any expectations of them, sorry, without any like, you know, forced mechanisms for them to like come around.
Mm.
So like entitlement, especially with like CT that has made such like a toxic environment to like distribute your tokens, like nowhere other than Web3 would someone complain about like receiving like $100 for,
Free money.
yeah, like, you know, it's like pretty.
Fuck, man, you gave me $1,000. What the fuck was this six-figure airdrop, huh? Everyone was telling me six figures. I got four.
Yeah, I mean, and also like, you know, comparison is the thief of joy, right? So like obviously you're gonna feel like a bit shafted if like Rufi got 5 figures for just talking about like a project and you've actually sunk in like hours and like referred tons of like different like clients. But anyways,
Mm.
to walk you through like, you know, the typical like process when I engage with like teams, first is to like find out exactly like what they've done in the past and like where their initial like head is at. And then the second point, even before like selling like our services, is just on giving them like a thorough understanding of like what other like clients in the space have like done, because we've
Yeah.
done all the different flows, right? Like I think that's the best part about like working with Click is that we're at the front lines really understanding how like people tailor their like incentive like alignment systems, whether they want to opt in for like utilization post TGE, whether they want to opt in for like, you know, lockup periods, whether they want to opt in for like decaying systems whereby like early exiters get like penalized, or other forms to like really like benchmark like their vision of alignment. And then
Mm.
we just like propose like a configuration or like co-ideate as we like come along. Now it could very well be a case where like the teams are like, hey, actually like this is really cool, but we want to opt in for like something more simple, and that's like fine, right? Everyone thinks that their shit doesn't stink, and
Mm.
sometimes they just have to like learn the hard way, and if they don't, then like, you know, honestly I can only wish them for the best. I never wish like ill upon like any clients or projects, even if they don't work with us, because I think that's like a net negative to like the broader industry. But yeah,
Yeah.
TLDR, this like discovery process is like very like involved, and we try to like extract as much like information as possible, and then like provide like, you know, different like insights. We don't do like direct like advisory unless like prompted, and like they ask us like, hey, give me like your opinion, is this like something that's like worthwhile? And we tend to try to like poke as many holes as possible in like the
Yeah.
why behind like their design philosophies. Once that
What?
is like out, then like it's a boring process of like consolidating like, you know, a scope of work, checking on like the technical side whether it's possible to like do it, or whether we've like built all these like modules in the past,
Yeah.
development cycle, commercials, um, and then like planning out like, you know, development, and ensuring that we just deliver the solution on time. We have two core remits, right? Make sure that like the shit works and make sure that it's shipped on time, and that's really it.
Yeah. Yeah. What is like when talking about the insights that your clients and partners can get through Clique, what are some examples of like deeper, more nuanced insights that people can get from their audience and community through Clique? Whether it be like those segmentations that you were mentioning, that can be made of the audience and so on.
Hmm. Well, I mean, a good example is like everyone's running like an, or at least everyone was running like an info campaign until it suddenly became like uncool. Um, so naturally, when you're building like an airdrop solution, if you want like a claim interface, I think you've seen like this popular meta with like registration portals, right? And the reason why
Yeah.
registration portals have become, I know that the community hates them, right? But like there is a reason behind like the madness. And the truth is, it really functions on like three single like use cases. One, from a marketing standpoint, which I guess is like more applicable to you, it like drives up like momentum. It lets like the community know that like something is like coming, right? And then like that hype build up is always something that like teams want to like cater towards, which is why they engage with like a lot of like agency creators, different like avenues to like spread the gospel, because you only get to like teach it once, right? The second reason is actually like more pragmatic than anything. And it's that like, look, if you're tracking like user activity on like X, it's not necessarily like binded to like a wallet address. So during like the registration process, it is like a necessary step for like users to connect like their X, verify ownership, as opposed to just like copy pasting like a wallet address, because then you want to be able to like track whether or not like they own like a specific like account, right? Or someone could like steal like another person's like airdrop. And that's why like the second like use case of like a registration portal is overall to like bind accounts to like one claim address. The third
Yeah.
use is, unfortunately, this is the part that's like true, right? Like it or not, there are some inactive like users that are gonna miss like this window of opportunity, and like it really acts as like a filter to like weed out like inactive users, which would have like a higher probability of. I mean,
Selling.
if you're really like a zealot, right? Like you would follow like that project like end to end, and that's like why teams like do this. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, like this like data consolidation part is like part of something that we like ask like different teams on like what different like campaigns they're running, whether they want to have like a posted like site for like these like users, whether they want to group everything up like together. That's like a big decision. When it comes to like insights for distribution mechanics, that's also like a loaded one, but it boils down to also like their ecosystem, what they've done so far, like the product life cycle, like where they're at. I'll give you like an example, right? Like a little freebie.
Mm.
So like Somnia was one of the Somnia and Plume were like pretty cool like chains that we like worked with. Plume's obviously focused on like RWAs. Somnia was like leaning on like the consumer and like the gaming space. Now as like new networks, you have to like think about like the perspective of like what's the worst thing that could happen, right? And the worst thing that could happen as like a new network, when you've like done all this like monumental effort and like getting builders together to like dedicate deploying on like your network, right? Like configuring like the tech stack and doing like all this like expensive like developer and like talent work, is for the recipients that were supposed to like come to like your chain to just claim the tokens and sell them and bridge out and never, you know, come back, right? Like then your builders are like, oh
Which
shit,
happens
like
most of the time.
yeah, 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 yeah. So on the topic of like retention, which is more on the lines of like post TGE, I think teams in the past used to be a bit more um, hopeful, or like
Mm.
even say like foolish, thinking like their community is going to stay. Again, everyone thinks that their shit doesn't stink. And that's totally fine. As a builder, you have to like love like the product. You really have to like believe in like the community to like a certain extent. But what we've done for like Somnia was like the system called contingent dynamic unlocks. Now it's a bit of a mouthful, but in short, they distributed I think 5% of like the supply on like the airdrop, which is a pretty significant sum. Not all of it was like liquid. They arbitrarily decided like on a 20-80 split, so like 20% were like made liquid on like day one, and 80% was like subject to this like contingent dynamic unlocks, which meant that like on a weekly basis the users were actually required to like fulfill a modicum of like activity, and like once they were past that threshold, then they were eligible for like 10% like a week. So in theory, over the course of like 8 weeks, you could claim like the full sum of like your airdrop. But the contingent component is quite important due to like the setup that we had from like week 8 to like week 12. That was like the buffer like grace window that you had if you didn't like take part in like those like weekly like activities, right? You could still like one shot it on like week 9, but like past week 13, the foundation like forfeited like all unclaimed like assets, right? So that was a good way to like, I'd say in a guided way, just tell the users if you want to like contribute or like unlock the most, you actually have to like interact with like the applications on like the ecosystem, which like then funnel them like more like activity. Of course, like Somnia's price action like took a bit of a hit, right? And by a hit, I mean
Yeah.
like a lot. All the other like teams out there, but I still think that these are the kind of experiments that like drive the space directionally towards like a better spot, right? Where
Yeah.
end of the day, I think when we compile like the total rewards left, like we saved them at the peak valuation, like close to like $10 million that would have otherwise just like been like squandered away, right? And those came
Yeah.
purely from like inactive users. Now,
Right.
whether or not the activity translated into like bringing more economical like value or like revenue to like the different dApps, I don't know, because like I don't define like what that activity threshold looks like, but it can also be like tailored and like optimized in like a more dynamic sense. But that was like an example
Mm.
of like, how like a chain had like different like concerns, and then like we just like addressed a solution together to counter that. Um, there's a DeFi protocol that's like upcoming, and what we're doing with them is like the inverse of like this like system. We call this like retractable vesting. So for the most part, if you're like a liquidity based protocol, you'll want to get like, stablecoin like deposits and like keep like your TVL like steady, if not like grow it, often pairing it up with like a points program. And how most of these teams like make money is of course like via like flash loans, lending, like borrowing, right, or like institutional players when they need like more liquidity, and then just like get like a couple like bips off like the borrowing rate, like lending rate. You get the whole gist. What was cool is that of course, like if after TGE everyone withdraws their liquidity, like because the protocol is using that liquidity to like generate the bulk of its like revenue, then you're kind of like fucked, right? So the
Yeah.
system that we're like defining, especially for like the whales, is something called like retractable vesting, where in short, on the day of the TGE, you'll be receiving like a portion of like your tokens like liquid, and the majority is going to be like uh, locked. But then you have the choice to the agency to choose between like an accelerated like vesting or like a normal one. If you choose the accelerated one, you're entering like a contract with like the, I mean, not an official contract, but you get the gist. An agreement with like the project, and there will be like full like disclaimers that if you don't preserve like your TVL like a certain number before like the end of it, then like your tokens will be like appropriated back by like nation. So
Yeah.
it's really about like leveraging like what you need the users for and making them recognize that like these are like the actions that they need to like fulfill if they want to like receive like their assets.
Yeah. I think that was the CT was taking a few shots at different protocols recently that had their TG, and then the TVL would drop insanely as people withdrew all their capital.
Mm.
So I think that retractable uh, like system that you guys have set up there is really good. And I have a couple of partners that are coming up towards TG in the future that I think would be very well suited for that.
I think once
The
this like system
TVL is the
goes
emphasis.
I think once the system
Mhm.
goes live, like it's not going to be perfect. There's obviously a lot of ways to like improve it. You could make the you can
It
make
can
like
be
the
positioned really well by the project as well, because like that TVL that they're locking in, even though that's to accelerate their vesting, they're also earning a yield on that too.
hmm. I mean, yes, that's like a definite, right? But then like people will have like shiny object syndrome and like rotate over. So I think
Yeah.
like if they want to withdraw their TVL, nothing is stopping them from like doing so. It's still like their funds at the end of the day, but like they just like
Mm.
forfeit like the remainder of like their allocation. And that protects like the token from actually being like extracted by like users that are not like aligned, which I think is like fair, all right,
Yeah.
and it's like a meritocratic like landscape. But we'll see. There's a lot of ways that this can be like improved, right? You could imply like that there's like a further acceleration if they bring more TVL via like referrals post TGE, or there could be like some form of like decay if they don't use like that liquidity with like channel partners, right? As like your aim to like consolidate a stronger ecosystem. Um, but yeah, it's mostly about like a product development perspective. When like these ecosystems like shape up, they have to like really identify all of like their users and like why these users choose to use that platform. Is it simply for like yield? Is it because like if you're building like a stable coin, that stable coin is like integrated in like a lot of like different assets? Is there like a farming agenda or like confluence where you're able to like farm two or three protocols for like one with like looping strategies, right? Like what's the real play around there? And then you just have to like configure a good system around it.
I love it. Charles, man, it's been a good conversation so far. I want to know, for those people that are listening, where could they catch you this year? Specific events that you're going to?
Like in real life events,
Yeah.
shit, man, I made like a whole list. uh I think Cat Lumpur is going to be
Mhm.
the in end of January. That one is going to be in Malaysia, so I expect to see you there. Then Denver. There's a lot of like the U.S. conferences as well, like in like Washington, New York, Cannes, for like ECC, Token Dubai. I don't like traveling. I think it's minus CP for the most part, but a lot of like institutional folks seem to like it. So
Yeah,
I'm gonna make it like, I mean, if I can't like secure like a lot of like meetings over there, I'm not gonna go. That's gonna be it. I'm just gonna like stay home and like ship and like direct the team and ensure that like all the projects like go live, because
yeah,
conference time takes away from that ability to
yeah. Like fulfillment ops.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And like I need to make sure that every launch goes by like super smoothly, right? Like we want
yeah,
the experience for clients to be so good that like we grow through word of mouth. Um,
yeah,
really prioritize like their feedback, and we're happy to like accommodate, be like flexible, which is I think an component that like a lot of other vendors can't cater towards, because
yeah.
like their work life balance.
Ah, stack work life balance, man. You can't compete in this industry with work life balance. No, I mean you can, but people the space moves so quickly, and I was talking about this with Jupe as well. Is like one of the, I guess, like key DNAs of Jupiter that has allowed them to stay competitive and then lead is their time to experiment, time to ship, time to catch on to like new narratives and push products and experiment, which is like obviously against work life balance as well. You can't achieve that with good work life balance.
I think you can, but it depends on like how like the organization is like built, right? And for Jupiter as like
Yeah,
a consumer application, it's really challenging, so you have to do this. But I would agree with
yeah,
that notion, because like again, on our personal journey, we started building like fairly generic interfaces, and they became like progressively more complex, to the point where now if
yeah,
like a team wants to like build it internally, there's no doubt that they can. It'll just take them like at the very minimum like a couple weeks to like months, and it's not even going to be like a guarantee that the solution will like work on the day of TGE. And that's where like
yeah,
competitors been like struggling a bit to like catch up, because they will all suddenly try to sell like the sun, the moon, the stars, and be like, oh no, custom stuff, we can build it. But realistically, and then you're presented with like Click that has done majority of like the large launches, especially like the custom ones, versus like another like vendor that claims that they can do it. For like a TGE, you don't want to fuck around. So there's like a
no,
trust aspect that was like built. And yeah, like I mean, similar philosophy, but like Jupiter is it's an insane team. They're really, really fucking
yeah,
good.
100%. Charles, thank you so much for coming around and appreciate you giving some time for us to host you and talk about Clique, yourself, airdrop marketing, and some of the trends that we're going to see evolve in 2026. I appreciate the time. Appreciate it,
Mm.
and we'll definitely catch up with you soon. I'll see you probably. I mean, definitely Dubai, Token 2049, since I'm based here now. But I'll see if I come over to the KBW, my favorite for sure. I love KBW because just I love going to Korea. So,
Like, bro.
uh, I, uh, but
Rufy's
I'll
a
see.
Hongdae guy, bro.
Well, you should look at Vin. Vin's looking like a Hongdae guy now, man. He's got like
Yeah,
a Hongdae. Yeah,
but are
yeah,
you
yeah.
both
Hey,
open-minded?
Vin.
I'll leave you to it, man. I'll leave you to it.
Charles is saying you're open-minded these days, huh? He's over here. Charles is saying, "Are you open-minded?" Clique. Yeah.
Wow, what a motherfucker.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. This guy. It's all right. We'll send him to zero. JPEG Yakuza, man. You can smack his ass later in Korea. He says
No,
he's
it's all
very
good.
open-minded. He thinks you're very open-minded. He said.
Mm-mm-mm. I'm very like strict and conservative guy. But anyways, I'll leave you to
Yeah.
it. More spicy takes. Like
Let's do it,
thanks,
man.
thanks for like having me on, and yeah, we'll catch you soon.
100%. Catch you, brother. Bye.
All right, bye bye. How do I leave this chat?